The jeep crawled up the mountain road, headlights cutting through swirling mist. Detective Dilip shivered, pulling his coat tighter. Manali in October was beautiful, yes, but brutally cold. The horror hotel loomed, a silhouette against the snow-capped peaks. It wasn't called that officially, of course, but the nickname fit. Dilip had seen pictures, but nothing prepared him for this. Stepping out, the air itself felt heavy, like a held breath. The driver unloaded Dilip's bag, a quick, nervous glance at the hotel before he was gone. Dilip approached the heavy oak doors, each step echoing in the silence. Above, a gargoyle seemed to leer down, a silent sentinel to whatever awaited inside. He took a deep breath, the scent of pine needles and something faintly metallic, and pushed the doors open. Warmth, sudden and overwhelming, enveloped him. A fire roared in a cavernous fireplace, shadows dancing on dark wood and faded velvet. The air hung thick with the scent of wood smoke and something else, something cloying and unfamiliar. It took him a moment to register the silence. No welcoming chatter, no clinking glasses, just the crackle of the fire and the unsettling awareness that he was being watched. The lobby was a study in contrasts. Grand, yet decaying, opulent, yet neglected. A massive chandelier, crystals dulled with dust, hung from a ceiling adorned with faded frescoes. Heavy velvet curtains, their color impossible to discern in the dim light, shut out the last of the day. Dilip walked further in, his footsteps echoing on the marble floor, each sound seeming to reverberate off unseen eyes. A shiver ran down his spine. It wasn't just the cold. There was a tangible weight to the silence, a sense of secrets clinging to the very walls. He ran a hand along the back of a plush armchair, the velvet coming away thick with dust. How long had it been since anyone had actually sat here? Every corner seemed to whisper of forgotten grandeur, of stories whispered and then silenced. A sound, faint but distinct, reached him. A muffled sob coming from somewhere deeper within the hotel. He turned, every sense alert, and followed the sound. It led him down a narrow corridor, portraits of stern-faced men and women lining the walls as if watching his progress. The air grew colder, the smell of dust and decay intensifying. The sobbing stopped abruptly. Dilip paused outside a heavy wooden door, the faint scent of jasmine tea mingling with the musty air. He raised his hand and knocked, the sound sharp and intrusive in the oppressive quiet. "Hello? Police, is someone in there?" Only silence answered him. He tried the handle, unlocked. He pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. The room was small, sparsely furnished, the only window shuttered tight, plunging the space into near darkness. He fumbled for the light switch, and a single dim bulb flickered to life, casting long shadows across the room. It was then that he noticed the figure slumped over the writing desk. The man was sprawled across a scattering of papers, his face turned away. He was still, utterly still. Dilip's training kicked in, moving him forward even as a cold dread settled in his stomach. He checked for a pulse, already knowing what he'd find. None. The man was cold, rigor mortis setting in. He took a step back, surveying the scene. The room was tidy, almost too tidy. No signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no forced entry. The only thing out of place was the dead man himself. Dilip leaned closer, catching a faint whiff of bitter almonds, the telltale scent of cyanide. But where was the poison? And why was there a single, white rose lying on the floor beside the desk, its petals already browning at the edges? A gruff voice startled him. "Dreadful business, isn't it, officer? Dilip turned to find himself facing a man who seemed to embody the hotel itself. Tall, gaunt, with a face etched with the weight of too many secrets. This had to be Robert, the owner. "I'm Detective Dilip," he said, his voice sharp in the quiet room. "And you are?" "Robert, at your service," the man said, a nervous tremor in his voice. "Or rather, not at your service. Not today. Not with this unfortunate incident." His eyes darted around the room, settling on the dead man with a strange mixture of fear and fascination. "I called the authorities the moment I found him," Robert continued, his voice gaining a touch of urgency. "Poor John, such a quiet fellow, kept to himself mostly. Who would do such a thing?" Dilip's gaze swept over the faces that had gathered in the doorway. A young maid, her eyes wide with fear, clutching a feather duster like a lifeline. A burly cook, his apron smeared with something that looked suspiciously like blood, his gaze fixed on the floor. And a wizened old man, the hotel handyman, his face unreadable, his eyes like chips of ice. Each of them held their breath, each a study in forced composure. Each, Dilip knew, held a secret.